Hey, I'm Sean from GovDash, here with Max from Ignyte. We've got a very important topic today. We're talking about why contractors need to take CMMC seriously today, what it looks like to do so, and why when they're working with software providers like GovDash, it's really important that those providers have their own FedRAMP moderate equivalency. Max, running a security and compliance company, you're living all things compliance every day. I think it'd be really helpful. Do you mind just giving kind of an overview of the state of compliance for federal contractors and specifically defense contractors today?
Yeah. Defense contractors and defense companies in general are going through a lot of change. With the current administration, there's all sorts of memos being released. Some of the biggest programs right now are like CMMC, FedRAMP equivalency, and there's even something called FedRAMP 20X, right? You also have software bill of materials. So there's a lot going on in the defense industrial space, and I think we're going through almost like an upgrade of the entire ecosystem because some of the things that we have been doing for like the last decade are highly inefficient. There's like an upgrade of entire, I would say, compliance space overall, especially with GPTs being out. So yeah, there's almost every single defense company is struggling and trying to figure out what is the right thing to do.
Yeah, we're seeing that as well. As we're going through these upgrades, part of that is software. These are trying to use software to help with FedRAMP. Why is software a critical part of this FedRAMP process?
So from our perspective, what the government really cares for is information. At the end of the day, yes, we have controls, we have legislation, but really we're trying to secure our country, and information is the ultimate goal to attain for a lot of other countries. You look at China and any other state nation actors. The main goal of a lot of these frameworks is to secure information. For defense contractors, especially for organizations that GovDash deals with and others, covered defense information is what they call it, or CUI, controlled unclassified information, right? That is all the unclassified information that's coming off of the military networks and flowing into our defense industrial base. So somehow we have to get a hold of that information, secure that information, and that's really important to our country and also to the government in general.
And so as these companies are looking at software vendors, how do they ensure that those software vendors actually satisfy CMMC requirements? Obviously, CMMC is top of mind for every defense contractor out there today.
Yeah, that's a great question. It used to be that they could self-attest and they could just say, hey, whatever we're doing is good enough. And then what started to happen was data was still leaking, information was not being secured. So the government created a protocol to go through a third-party assessment. So a lot of them have to go through an implementation process, make sure their ducks are in a row when it comes to internal security, and then literally they have to get somebody else to actually grade their security and issue a certificate and whatnot. So that's a consistent scheme across the board with validating FedRAMP, CMMC, and whatever else they might come up with to have high trust in the system itself.
Yeah, you mentioned that contractors can't just self-attest or use a cloud environment, a commercial cloud environment anymore. That's not good enough. Can you share a little bit more about why that is the reality today?
Yeah, a lot of times when we look at cloud service providers, the big issue is where is your data stored, jurisdictional control. So let's say if we have a data center in China, well, US doesn't have jurisdiction in China. So they came up with this concept of validating everything from a cloud service provider, starting with the Amazons of the world. Now it's getting up to the SaaS companies, right? And so you can't grade your own homework, right? So a lot of SaaS companies are hosted overseas or not on GovCloud or not on a government managed, or I would say government validated data center. So that's very important from a jurisdiction perspective. So really it comes down to not grading your own homework, but validating, right? It's about building trust in the entire country, in the nation, and you can't do that without validating where the actual information is getting hosted. Very critical for SaaS companies today.
How should contractors think about the relationship between FedRAMP and CMMC?
Sure. So on the surface, CMMC looks like what we call a baby ATO, baby authority to operate, or a smaller version of FedRAMP. But I think they're two entirely different intents and purposes. So FedRAMP is more of a product security certification. So you've got your own SaaS product, and you got to credential and certify that product. So that's how we should think about FedRAMP. It's got a very tight boundary. But when it comes to CMMC, it's more of a corporate thing. So it's tied to your cage code, which is your entity identifier. And so really the entire company is potentially liable, where FedRAMP, you're just securing the product, right? So they're two totally different mindsets. And I think they're both important, right? Your corporation, if it's not secure, your product is gonna follow the same kind of pattern.
If I'm a contractor today, when should I start thinking about CMMC?
So if you're a contractor right now at this moment in November or almost December 2025, it's almost too late. So I think the final rule came out 60 to 70 days ago, and the government is going to roll out what they call phase one, and they're going to start adding it to solicitation as a potential condition of award. So if you're a defense contractor, you're already behind. You should have been doing this 12 to 18 months ago, and now it's time to book the audit, essentially. So if you haven't started, you're really behind, and the best way to get ahead is to get technologies that are already credentialed, already certified, FedRAMP equivalency being one of them, and that can help them speed it up, right? But they really should have started their journey 12 months ago.
Mm. And so speaking of technology, a lot of the companies that we work with at GovDash, their technology approach is critical to how they're going to run their businesses now and into the future. I'm curious, so if you're one of these contractors and you're evaluating different software platforms, what's the bare minimum? Like, what are the requirements that you need to see from a security and compliance perspective from these SaaS vendors that you want to use for really any use case?
That's a great question. So we actually have looked at a lot of software that is for capture management, proposal management. We've seen the gamut. And because we're a cyber company, if we were to work with defense and we have a facility clearance, what's really important to us is that as the US government is supplying us with potentially sensitive procurement information, it doesn't end up in the wrong hands. Mm-hmm. So what's really important is that we work with, first and foremost, patriots, people who really care for our nation. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but as a prior military guy, that's really important to majority of the defense contractors, because majority of the defense contractors, they come from a prior military background. That's number one. And then the second thing I think is, what have you done as a SaaS provider to build trust in your system? You can have a human level trust, but what have you done to validate the security? And so having FedRAMP equivalency, being on the marketplace, proving out, another CMMC type framework, those are stepping stones to show that you are a trustworthy supplier. That's very important in the defense industry, especially when we're dealing with high security data.
So in this new CMMC world, is it fair to say that it's basically table stakes, that if you're going to be using software, whichever one is, that software needs to meet these requirements? It needs to actually be audited. They can't do their own homework, right? They need to at least have like FedRAMP moderate equivalency or something higher than that.
Yeah, I would say, and we're already seeing this, where certain companies have signed a contract for 3 years with a SaaS company, and they're moving away because you're not helping them get certified, right? So it is, high assurance is table stake, right? Mm-hmm. Whether that comes through FedRAMP moderate, FedRAMP high, there are options out there depending on the type of information that flows. But I think for SaaS companies, if there's covered defense information, CUI, you have to do FedRAMP moderate, right? At minimum. And if you are not on that journey already, or if you have not completed it, I can see in 2 to 3 years, that company probably won't be around.
Yeah, so if you're a SaaS vendor, not only do you have to provide value to your end customer, but you also need to help them with their own certifications, right? You can't be the blocker between them and getting CMMC.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of SaaS companies, they just see themselves as, hey, we're this capability, but in defense, capability is integrated with security. If you're not thinking about it that way, you are blocking them from winning work. You're actually slowing their growth down because you have not invested yourself in security. And so if a critical component like proposal and capture management is tied to the growth of the business and that component is not secure, eventually they're gonna have to lift and shift, move off of that, and that's gonna cause a slowdown. I think it's really important for SaaS companies to be advocate of their customers and help them win more business versus just thinking about it as, well, we're just a cog in the giant machine. You're not. You're a very important player in the ecosystem, especially when it comes to securing information.
The reason we decided to invest relatively early at GovDash in getting our own FedRAMP moderate equivalency and both the time and the money that goes into that, rather than maybe just getting some like off-the-shelf cloud wrapper would be able to pass down to us, is because we want to not only provide value to our clients in terms of the workflows that we run across op identification, capture, proposals, contracts, whatever it may be. Also, like you said, the product workflows are directly integrated with the security posture. It's almost one and the same. It's two sides to the same coin. And so that investment was something that we were willing to do because we sort of saw this early. Now that we have that, we feel really confident that we're in the best position to support our customers as they go through their own audit journeys in the future.
Sean, let me ask you this. I think it's great that you guys have invested and you understand the reason behind it, but what's the impact to your customers? How have your customers reacted in terms of when you tell them, hey, we are taking this serious? What has that been like on your side?
I think the message from our customers was that, hey, this is actually table stakes. Like, they're super excited that we went ahead and did this. But to your point earlier, over time, this is something that everyone has to do. Otherwise, you can't even be a player in the game. And so what it means for our customers, though, is we're not going to be a roadblock in their journey, right? They can trust that GovDash will always put that investment in when it matters in terms of our security and compliance posture being ready to meet the needs of their security and compliance in the future and today.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I think the way I look at it, Sean, is that, so from the audit side, we always deal with chief security officers, CIOs, who are under the gun to get their company certified, right? A CEO may look at it as like, hey, this is a roadblock, get it done. The way I look at what you guys have done is essentially help them keep their job as well as make their job a lot easier, right? Because imagine you get a solicitation and you've been invited into a solicitation, and now you got all this data flowing, right? That security leader, that technology leader has to make sure it doesn't flow outside of the United States and it's secure and all that kind of stuff. So I think the net result of that is you're accelerating their journey, right? Can you think of any particular examples where before you had gone through the journey, where when you realized, hey, this is very important, right? Because I think you guys started a while ago, but what was it like before that for you guys as you guys were talking to defense contractors and whatnot?
Yeah, credit to our customers. So before we had our FedRAMP moderate equivalency and were audited for that, companies couldn't run CUI through GovDash. And we were very intentional about letting them know that that was the case. There are many vendors out there that, to sort of assuage concerns around, hey, I won't be able to run all my workflows if some of them are CUI. And they'll actually tell people that they can run those workflows when that's not truthful and actually puts the customer at risk. Early on, we decided, hey, we're just going to say, we can't put CUI into the system. We can do self-hosted deployments if you want, but in our cloud version, it just won't happen. And we're doing that to protect you. And for that reason, again, credit to our customers, they were willing to use GovDash, even if a good percentage of their workflows did contain CUI, because they knew that we would make the investments and we would follow through on our timelines to deliver our own FedRAMP moderate equivalency on the cloud version so that they would be able to run CUI in the future. And so we're really happy that we did this and that they were patient as we went through this process, which, as you know, is a very big undertaking.
Yeah.
But now that we have it today, not only are they already trained on GovDash, using it for all of their non-CUI workflows, but now they can also run all of their CUI workflows directly in the same system that their teams already know and love.
That's awesome, man. I think what you guys did with, providing a little bit of transparency to the customer, giving them options on-prem, on cloud, and just being very open about it is like a dream of a security person. Because a lot of times what security leaders end up figuring out is companies are advertising they're this, that, and the other, but they're really not, right? They're leaning forward so much, and you can't blame them, but at a certain point it gets unethical, right? So we've seen a lot of companies that will say they're FedRAMP equivalent, they have the body of evidence, but they don't have anything, especially within the capture space, unfortunately, right? So I would say you guys are one of the few companies that have taken this opportunity, not try to shove SOC 2, ISO, the commercial certifications. Not that there's anything wrong with them, it's just not as high assurance, right? It's not built for the government, things like that. You know, hats off to you guys, because I see the exact opposite in the market, where people say that they're doing something and intentionally they're really not in the background. So that's amazing.
Appreciate it.
Cool.